The way business is done in football changed completely when financial fair play rules were introduced to European football in 2009. These days, even though you have all the money in the world, you better be careful how you spend it, because it could certainly land you in some big trouble. Heck, you must also be careful how you incur losses, because that too could get you in trouble. Right now, Manchester City are under trial for allegedly breaking FFP rules, and while we all wait to see what punishment will be imposed, let us look at 7 times clubs were punished for breaching FFP rules. Then we'll look at what to expect if Man City are found guilty. Let's start with their neighbours, Manchester United. In 2023, Manchester United were found guilty of breaching financial fair play regulations between 2019 and 2022. They were said to have miscalculated their losses during that period of 4 years. The club admitted to the breaches, but was a bit unsatisfied that UEFA refused to properly account for the losses that were incurred during the period of the global pandemic. Anyway, United's punishment for the breaches, which was determined to be a minor one, was a €300,000 fine. And United are not even the only big Premier League club who were punished for breaching FFP rules in 2023. Do you know what other Big Six clubs were punished? Tell us in the comments. We'll see if you're right later. But for now, let's talk about Barcelona. In 2023, the Spanish Giants were found guilty of breaching FFP rules. What exactly did they do? So, in the financial year of 2022, they wrongly reported profits on disposal of intangible assets. And according to the rules, those types of income are not relevant. What was their punishment for this? Simple. They were slapped with a €500,000 fine by UEFA, which has heavily contributed to their ongoing financial woes. But punishments don't only come in the form of fines. If that were the case, Man City would not fear their ongoing case at all, because they have all the money in the world. But, well, history tells us that you could also be banned from the big competitions, just like Juventus and AC Milan. In 2022 and 2023, Juventus were found guilty of breaching FFP regulations. In 2022, all they got was a fine. But in 2023, they were slapped with a 1-year ban from all European competitions, along with a €20 million fine. Now, that ban meant that Juventus did not participate in the UEFA Europa Conference League in the 2023-24 season, even though they'd qualified by their 7th place finish in the Serie A table the previous season. Instead, their spot was given to Fiorentina, who finished 8th. As you probably know, Fiorentina went on to reach the final of the competition that season, only narrowly losing an extra time to Olympiacos. The butterfly effect of a seemingly small FFP breach is interesting to see, isn't it? Then in 2019, AC Milan were found guilty of having breached FFP regulations, and as a result, they were banned from participating in UEFA competitions for 1 year. In the 2018-19 season, they finished 5th in the Serie A table, which meant that they should have participated in the Europa League in the 2019-20 season. But because of this ban, they had to sit it out, and AS Roma, who finished 6th, went in place of them. Their actual crime, according to UEFA, was that they failed to comply with spending regulations between 2015 and 2018. So, UEFA found this bad enough to warrant a ban from Europe for the club. It's important to note that AC Milan went to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to appeal this ban, but nothing came out of that, and the ban was upheld. Now that the Court of Arbitration for Sport has come up, let us quickly tell you about how it saved Man City's arse in the past. But just before we do that, if you're enjoying this video, just take a second to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you can see more stuff like this. Done? So, back to Man City. You see, this ongoing trial is not new territory for City at all. They've gone through this before, and even got slapped with a heavy punishment after they were found guilty. In 2020, the English champions were found guilty of breaching FFP rules, and for that, UEFA punished them with a €30 million fine. And on top of that, they banned them from participating in any European competition for 2 years. Wow! But wait a minute, we still saw them in the Champions League in the subsequent seasons. In fact, they even got to the final in 2021. Why? Well, that's where the Court of Arbitration for Sports comes in. So, after City were banned by UEFA, the club went to CAS to appeal, and within months, the ban was overturned. Why? Well, because some allegations were unproven, while the others were beyond the 5-year limit for UEFA investigations of that nature. CAS also reduced the fine by 20 million euros. So the only punishment City suffered was a 10 million euro fine. It's because of this that many Man City fans are optimistic that the ongoing trial won't be too damaging. But maybe they shouldn't be so optimistic, because this situation and their ongoing trial aren't the same thing. We'll explain better in a minute, but first let's talk about that other big Premier League club that got punished in 2023. It was Chelsea. They were found guilty of submitting incomplete financial information while Roman Abramovich was still in charge of the club, and their punishment for that was a 10 million euro fine. Now, I know many of you have been waiting for us to talk about what happened to Everton and Nottingham Forest last season. Well, you've got what you want. Let's talk about it. So, for those who follow the Premier League, you would know that those two clubs saw points deducted from them in the 2023-24 season. What exactly happened there? We'll explain, but we have to start from the beginning. So, you see, every other punishment we've talked about so far in this video has been imposed by UEFA, but the punishments for Everton and Nottingham Forest were inflicted by the Premier League. The English top-flight league introduced its own FFP guidelines in 2015 and called it the Profit and Sustainability Rules. It's the same premise as UEFA's FFP, but with quite different parameters. We won't bore you with the technical details, but if any club is found guilty of breaching PSR, they would be sent to an independent commission that will decide the punishment that the club will face. So, in March 2023, Everton were found guilty of breaching these rules and were slapped with a 10-point deduction. The club appealed, and it was then reduced to 6 points. But later in January 2024, the Toffees were found guilty of a separate breach, and for that, they got a 2-point deduction which the club said it would not appeal. So, in total, the Merseyside club saw 8 points deducted from them in the 2023-24 Premier League season. It was a miracle how they managed to escape regulation despite that, even finishing 15th in the table. Without that 8-point deduction, Everton could have finished 12th. That for sure would have done a lot for their confidence. Anyway, in January 2024, Nottingham Forest were also found guilty of breaching PSRs, and they were slapped with a 4-point deduction, which dragged them into a relegation battle. They managed to escape eventually, but only just, finishing a place above the drop zone. It was found that they incurred more losses than were allowed for a period of 3 years, which ended in the 2022-23 financial year. Reports say that there were early considerations of fining the club for this breach, but a point deduction was eventually settled upon. But that's not even all. Leicester City were charged in March 2024, and they've been referred to an independent commission that would decide their fate. They failed to submit their accounts for the 2022-23 season, and then later, their losses were found to be about £100 million above what the PSR allows for clubs. Chelsea too have been charged, and investigations are currently underway. This one's interesting, because it was the club that reported themselves to the league shortly after the new owners completed their takeover. This leads us to the next, very important point. Now, remember, we told you earlier in this video that Man City's previous FFP breach and the whole investigation are very different from the ongoing one. Well, here's why. You see, the previous one was a UEFA thing, but this one right here is a Premier League thing, and they're faced with over 100 charges, making it one of the highest profile cases in recent times. And that is evidenced in how popular the number 115 has become since Man City were first charged in February 2023. What's popular on the streets is that Manchester City are currently facing 115 charges, but reports say it could be even more, perhaps above 130. Crazy, right? It's hard to see the club escaping every single one of those charges, you know? Now, let us give you a quick breakdown of some of these charges the Premier League champions are facing, so you know what they're dealing with. They are facing 14 charges for failing to provide accurate details of payments of coaches and players, 7 charges for breaching the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. 5 charges for failing to comply with UEFA's financial fair play rules. 35 for failing to cooperate with the Premier League's investigations. And 54 charges for failing to provide accurate financial information. What punishment will the club be facing if they're found guilty of all or even some of these charges? It's difficult to say. When the news of these charges broke back in February 2023, the BBC reported that we were in uncharted territory, so nobody knew what to expect from the ongoing trial. But it's just very difficult to see Man City coming out of this completely unscathed. It's only a matter of what degree of punishment they'll suffer. There have been all sorts of speculations, from fines to points deductions and even to relegation and stripping of medals. But recent reports say that one of the suggestions floating around is for points to be deducted from the club over several seasons. That way their chances of competing for and winning titles will be heavily affected. They could also deduct points from the seasons where they were found guilty of impropriety, which would mean that they lose some of their medals, like in the 2018-19 and 2021-22 seasons, for example, when they won the league by just 1 point. Surely, this one is music to the ears of Liverpool fans everywhere. But all that is child's play compared to the reports which say that the Independent Commission is seriously considering expelling Manchester City from the Premier League altogether. Honestly, this one is way too severe and seems too unrealistic. Even from an economic standpoint, we don't see how the Premier League will sanction the expulsion of their biggest representative in European competitions over the last decade. But what do you think will happen to City? How heavy do you think their punishment will be? Or do you think they'll even be punished in the first place? Get in the comments and tell us what you think. But wait a minute, what if we told you that this is not even the first time Man City have gotten in trouble for financial impropriety? One time, their owner saw his assets frozen, which threw the club into some serious trouble. If you want to know about this and more, go watch our video on the entire history of Manchester City. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and let us know in the comments.